Chapter 7. "Quit moving," Karma whispered, but they kept doing it. "I said quit moving." "Will you shut up?" they snapped. "I'm trying to listen." Karma unexpectedly did as the nuisance said. In this damned closet, they fought to peep out of the small keyhole that gave them a clear view and clear hearing. Karma shoved Ellen aside. They pushed him right back. They continued the motion without looking at each other until it proved useless. Annoyingly, they silently decided to share the small space. They were crouched down, Ellen on their knees and Karma on his, but also sitting. He thought that if he could see himself through someone else's eyes, he'd look like a princess. Shoving the thought away, Karma huffed a sigh and leaned back on his hands. He had been skipping class, one of the many things he did to clear his mind, and had coincidentally seen Ellen on the east balcony, on their phone. They headed toward the south stairway, so of course he followed their shadow, wondering if he could catch them doing something he could use against them. When he saw they were only taking a break from class, that they only wanted a few moments of peace and quiet and serenity, he knew he'd have to give them anything but. Using the skills he'd learned from Karasuno sensei, he'd easily snuck up behind the individual and began buying the drink they were after. When he'd found his strawberry milk emptied in the trash, he'd just knew that Ellen was responsible. Nagisa had tried to calm him down, but he still needed to get even. Not even this was enough. He needed to do something easily as cruel. Then there was the fact that he'd noticed the little shift the couple had made. He'd picked it up and examined the cabinet. He'd seriously needed to clean its tomb, but he hadn't cleaned it since he'd put it there. The only reason he checked up on the couple was that the cabinet door seemed off. It was slightly ajar, and he knew how he'd left that cabinet. There hasn't been a single day when he'd gone without gazing at that door, wondering what his mom meant by embedding those stupid jewels. His father. Gods, he didn't even want to think about that man. The one that he got everything from. The one who had made him what he was before Koro-sensei, before Nakamura and Kaino and Nagisa. He shook his head, trying to remain in the present, because he knew that if he dived too deep. He began to shake his head again when Ellen's hand came flying toward his knees, which he'd propped up when leaning back. "Look," they whispered. So Karma leaned forward, heart pounding as he watched Ellen watch him look through the hole. What he saw? Nothing. There was nothing. He turned his head back to Ellen and lifted an eyebrow. Amusement laced their every feature. Begrudgingly, he averted his eyes and stood. Ellen's hand finally fell back to their side. Their eyes widened a little, the only shock, he supposed, they would let show. As he opened the broom closet door, he wondered, "What time is it?" They stepped out behind him, shutting the door. Karma watched the large windows near the sitting area and vending machines. "You have about 30 minutes to get out of here." He sucked in a breath, which left him 20 minutes to meet Nakamura. 25 if he was fast enough. He hadn't gone to school today, but he left his house around an hour ago, courtesy of Nakamura's incoming text. Again, she'd written she needed assistance. For anyone else, he looked toward Ellen. Oh, okay, maybe just to see them get on their knees and beg. He was considering helping them. But besides Nakamura, Nagisa, or Kaino, he would have straight up ignored the message. But Karma's eyes slid back toward Ellen, who was staring at their phone intently, a crease in their brow. It was an odd look, one he'd got the pleasure of seeing only when they thought he wasn't looking, which was very rare. Observant little. As if they'd heard his thoughts, Ellen's eyes cut to his, narrowing slightly, but not in the glare he was so used to. It was in curiosity. Yes? He tilted his head, but they just shook their head and ran a hand through their hair, rubbing their temples in the process. Well, I have to go. He poked a thumb out behind him, not really caring what had been stressing them out. Ellen's eyes shot to his own in a warning, and there was that glare he was so used to. It felt weird there for a moment. They'd never spent so much time together without saying or making it obvious how much they'd rather be doing something else. Bad luck. I hope you get attention for being gone so long, he said as they started walking back toward the south stairwell. Ellen waved him off, their parting words being, "Bad luck. I hope they finally expel you." Karma chuckled to himself. Only then. Only them. Only they would be able to get away with saying things like that. As Karma walked toward the east window he'd gotten in through, he thought about why. Why did he let them get away with things like that? This certainly wasn't the first time he'd contemplated it, but it was the first time he'd actually cared enough to look for an answer. A thought struck him, somewhere in his gut, and just as it slid in, he shoved it out, hating it the moment it came to him. It made him sick. He braced a hand on the outer wall of Kunigigauka, trying to get his stomach in order. He'd take medicine later. Right now, he needed to meet Nakamura and get this over with. So Karma shoved the bile rising in his throat right back down and started walking again, fixing his face into that arrogant, calculating grin.